I'd like to welcome you all this evening to this gathering on Pastoral Zones and Collaborative Ministry. This is a development that has been happening in our diocese over the last few years, and it has lots of roots in a little longer period. And so what I'd like to do this evening is to provide some reasons why we're moving toward Pastoral Zones, and secondly to look at how pastoral zones will be developed here in our own diocese. And so as you see by the slide, there will be three sections to the first part, where I talk a little bit about collaborative ministry, the fundamentals of collaborative ministry, and how collaborative ministry or pastoral zoning will develop. And then the second part, we will look at the notion of pastoral zone, as well as the role of priests and lay people, and the implementation of pastoral zones themselves. If we think about this topic of pastoral zones and collaborative ministry, we need to realize that there's been some experiences in our own diocese that have led to this movement. As our personnel committee in the diocese looks at moves for priests, we begin to realize that the number of priests is radically declining. In the 1960s, we had 250 priests, and now we have about 40 of our own priests that we're able to appoint in different places in the diocese. As a result of that, we also need to recognize that we need to be more attuned to lay people being involved in different ministries in the diocese. The lay formation and ministry program that took place a number of years ago is being revitalized now, and we need to look at how are lay people being formed within the diocese. We also are restarting the diaconate program, and the diaconate program will produce a number of deacons for us to be used in pastoral ministry. We also have, in the last year, been looking at catechist formation as we start a new resource in our diocese. And lastly, we've just hired a director for youth ministry, and that will call forth the whole area of young people, but also adults to accompany young people in ministry. These kinds of experiences over the last number of years have led us to really be aware of the importance of collaborative ministry. And by collaborative ministry, I mean, as you see on the slide, is a term used to describe the particular relationships or ways of working or patterns of ministry which bring together lay people, religious, and clergy. The relationships and the patterns of ministry that are involved in this collaborative ministry really flow as a consequence and an implication of the vision of Vatican II. And so that's really where I want to start in looking at the context of collaborative ministry in our diocese. If we look at the teaching of Vatican II, Vatican II provided us with a new understanding of lay people, a new understanding of mission, the mission of the church, and a real sense that lay people are involved in the mission of the church and are called to holiness, called to the life and the mission of the church. And so as a result of that call of Vatican II, we need to continue to develop understandings and practices of collaborative ministry here in our own diocese. The second thing, and partly as a result of those experiences that I mentioned a little earlier, we have some changing pastoral circumstances. Not only do we have a decline in the number of priests in our own diocese, but we also have a decline in the number of people who are attending church as a result of the new pastoral configurations of throughout many of the deaneries of the diocese. We've discovered that a lot of people have been disconnected from church. And so what we need to do is to create some kind of ministry whereby we reach out to these people and to be aware of the changing circumstances within our own diocese and within the whole church at large. So those are the two areas of context, the Vatican II and our own diocesan changing circumstances that call us to collaborative ministry. But we also need to look at the larger church as well. If we look at the larger experience within the church, there's quite a number of lay people, growing number of lay people who are involved in full-time ministry in church in various dioceses throughout Canada and throughout the world. There's also a new understanding of parish, an understanding of parish that calls for new possibilities for ministry, for mission, for leadership at the parish level. There's also, since near the year 2000, our Holy Father called us and called the whole church to a sense of pastoral planning. And so we need to be moving into this area of pastoral planning whereby we make strategic decisions on how we are going to plan the pastoral mission of our churches and our parishes. The experience of the RCIA has also given the whole church and our own diocese as well a real awareness of the importance of different kinds of ministries. And so when we think about those three areas, Vatican II, our own pastoral experience within our own diocese, and the larger pastoral experiences of the whole church, we see that there's a real development and a movement toward collaborative ministry. And so that's what we really want to do. Collaborative ministry is one of the ways of helping us deal with some of the issues of our own diocese. A shortage of ministers, a shortage of lay people who are connected to church, a shortage of young people who are connected, out-migration, all of those kinds of concerns that are involved. And we need to see the collaborative ministry that we're going to talk about within a pastoral zone as a way to address some of these concerns. So I'd like to just look at for a few moments now what we mean by collaborative ministry, because collaborative ministry is in some sense the reason for pastoral zones. Collaborative ministry is a kind of a relationship where we work together because of our understanding of church as communion. The church as communion is really something that Vatican II opened up for us and helped us appreciate. But church as communion means that we need to work together, that there are people working together in the life of the church, and there's a kind of partnership set up. A partnership of those who are baptized and confirmed, but also those who are ordained and those who are married, all of those vocations coming together, recognizing the different gifts that are involved, so that we can work together in a partnership and minister to the people within a pastoral zone. When we think about the collaborative ministry, the fundamentals of collaborative ministry, as you see by the slide that is there, involves and demands a conscious commitment to certain values and convictions. We need to recognize that Christian initiation, baptism and confirmation, gives us a shared but a differentiated responsibility for the life and mission of the church. In other words, by baptism and confirmation, we are called to co-responsibility. And that's really the heart and the foundation of collaborative ministry and ultimately of the pastoral zone that we're creating. It calls us to work together on equal terms, a conviction that our different vocations and different gifts are complementary, even though that they also may be mutually enriching. There's an agreement that we are accountable to each other for the work that we do and how we do the work. So this whole area of collaborative ministry is really the foundation for the pastoral zones that we're going to talk about. Collaborative ministry then, first of all, we need to have a fundamental desire to work together, because we're called to do this by the Lord, to be a company of disciples. We're not called to be individual disciples, but we're called to be a company of disciples. And so the Lord calls us into relationship with one another. As a result of that fundamental desire to work together, which is really the foundation of collaborative ministry, then we need to grow through a process of formation. And that formation we're offering over the next few months when we talk about the formation for pastoral teams within a pastoral zone. It requires a willingness to face and work through conflict because of the attraction and the value of a common good. It means that we need to work together. It means that we not only have a desire to work together, but we try to work together. And working together means that we need to deal with conflicts that inevitably will arise, but also really with the desire to ultimately to look after the common good of the pastoral zone. Collaborative ministry really begins and develops, as you can see by the slide, with a focus on lay ministry. Now, most of us are very familiar with the term lay ministry. When we think about our liturgy, lay ministry, we have lots of lay ministers involved in our liturgy, whether they're readers or extraordinary minister of Holy Communion, sacristan, ushers, minister of hospitality, the music ministry. All of those various ministries are lay ministries, and that's really the beginning of the process of collaboration. It really demands collaboration. Then demands a change in the structures in a parish and a wider understanding of decision making. So people who are involved in these lay ministries are not just there to help Father, but they are in fact responding to their own call of baptism and confirmation. They are involved there by a call from the Lord with a way to collaborate within a parish to work together. But collaborative ministry doesn't just happen because people work together and cooperate together in some way. There's also a gradual and mutual evolution of new patterns, new attitudes, and a new self-understanding, which doesn't happen by accident. In fact, it happens only because of a conscious commitment to this working together. Collaborative ministry is something that must be chosen and must be consciously pursued with conviction. It won't work if those who are involved in it do not really want it, or if they feel that it's imposed by the bishop or by the priest or by anybody outside themselves. So what we're doing really over the next few months is to do some formation and education on collaborative ministry. And ultimately, collaborative ministry moves to the point where there will be a team in a pastoral zone to look after all of the spiritual needs of those who are involved in that zone. So that's really an understanding of why we're moving toward a collaborative ministry in pastoral zones. It has to do with the experience of pastoral ministry that we've had. It has to do with developments within the whole church. It has to do with developments in our own diocese. And as a result of those developments and those kinds of movements, then we need to understand that collaborative ministry is one of the best ways for us to move ourselves forward and to really address the pastoral and spiritual needs of all the parishioners of our diocese. Okay, so I've given you a little bit of background to why we want to move toward pastoral zones. And now I'd like to look at how we're going to organize pastoral zones within the diocese. As I said, pastoral zones then is really one of the ways for us to organize ourselves, to address all of the pastoral concerns and spiritual concerns of parishioners of our diocese. Right now, the way that pastoral care is organized is usually with one priest who looks after one parish, or maybe one priest looking after several parishes, or maybe one priest looking after a number of parishes that have come together, or perhaps there are two priests who are looking after a number of parishes together. Those are the kinds of situations that we're involved in now in terms of pastoral care, in terms of organizing pastoral care in our diocese. But what we want to do is we want to move to a pastoral zone. And a pastoral zone fundamentally has to do with a pastoral team being involved in collaborative ministry and overseeing the pastoral care of all those people in a zone. So for example, we've also already decided that we would have 2 zones in Inverness. So we would have the southern part of Inverness County would be, or the deanery would be one zone, and then the northern part would be the second zone. We're also thinking about a zone in Pictou County as well. And so what we'd have is the priests of those areas. So there could be 2 priests that are there. Those 2 priests would be 2 of the members of a pastoral team. We would also have some deacons, if there's deacons available in the area. We'd also have a number of lay people who would be discerned from this formation and education period that we're having over the next few months. And so really it will involve a number of lay people involved with a number of different areas that they have expertise in, or they have a real desire to work in. We would also have a business administration for the entire zone, maybe an administrative office. We would have 1 pastoral council for the whole zone and 1 finance committee for the whole zone. And so what we have then is a gathering of a number of parishes, and the parishes will still remain as parishes, at least for the time being. The parishes of the particular area then will form 1 pastoral zone to be looked after by this team of people. Priests, deacons, and lay people, and so those people will be trained over the next few months, so that we will eventually be able to appoint a pastoral team in each of the zones, hopefully by next June, and maybe later, depending on how things develop over these next few months. So the pastoral zone then will work in terms of the priests. It will work with some decisions made by the priests. It will work some decisions made by lay people, and then we'll need to say how will it unfold within a pastoral zone itself. So for the priests themselves, each of the priests who are involved in that area right now will decide how they will be involved in the zone. Some priests may retire and be involved in terms of assisting the other priests who are in leadership roles. Some others will be the pastor, maybe a co-pastor of a zone, or maybe a priest will be the pastor and someone else will be the assistant pastor. All of those decisions will be made in collaboration with the priests themselves to decide how we're going to how the priests are going to be involved in these pastoral zones. The second thing then is the lay people. The lay people will also make decisions about what is necessary in this particular zone. What are the spiritual and pastoral needs that are there, so that the lay people can address those needs. So some of those needs have to do with especially there may be special needs for seniors or for young people or for outreach in terms of evangelization. Those are some of the needs that may arise. But the lay people themselves will discern how they will be involved in participating in the pastoral team. So this period of education and formation will be a time for the lay people to say, yes, I'm interested in being a part of the leadership team, or maybe I'm not interested in the leadership team. I may be interested in assisting them through various committees, because there will be a number of committees necessary, just like we have committees within our own parishes. And so there will be decisions made by lay people as well as decisions made by the priests in terms of how a team will be constructed and established over the next year or so. The next thing that we need to look at is how it's going to be implemented within our diocese. So first of all, once we have a team in place, then we will have to establish a zone pastoral council. Just like a pastoral council in a particular parish, the zone will have a pastoral council that deals with the pastoral issues and will be an advisory body to the whole team itself. And so it's a real way for people to be involved in making sure that the needs of the whole zone will be looked after. During this period where we're looking at a zone pastoral council, the pastoral councils at the parish council level, at the parish level, may also continue on if that's necessary, but it may not, because there will be representatives from each parish on the pastoral zone council. Various members of the pastoral zone team will oversee and be a liaison to the necessary committee that will be established. So just as in a parish pastoral council, you have representatives on the council who may be liaison with various other committees of a pastoral council. So the same thing with the zone pastoral council. So we'll have to have a person with regard to liturgy, someone with regard to buildings and finance, faith development, evangelization and outreach. All of these committees then will be formed with a liaison from the pastoral team, and then representatives from the various zone parishes that are involved. The other thing then will be that right now we have ladies groups and men's groups, CWL, KFC, other kinds of groups together, and maybe there would be one group of women and one group of men that are involved in ministry throughout this whole zone. So that's another development that we would need to look at. We'd also need to look at the resources that are used by the zone for outreach and evangelization. If we think about the importance of evangelization or reaching out to those who are disconnected with church, we know that this is going to be one of the major emphasis of the pastoral zone. The pastoral zone will have to be able to reach out to those who are disconnected with church and really make an effort. And so this is going to be one of the criteria, or one of the major issues that the pastoral zone will have to look at. It needs to find ways to look at how substantial resources will be used for this purpose as well. When we think about the zone itself, we also need to recognize that there are financial concerns. So each parish will be responsible for the upkeep of their own buildings, but there's a sense there that the parishes will have to contribute toward the shared expenses of the zone. Just like now, when there are a number of parishes working together in collaboration, they have shared expenses and they share the costs of running the parish. Likewise, for the whole zone, we would need to look at the percentages that are involved, so that parishes would contribute to the working of the pastoral zone itself. The other area of the zone in terms of implementation will have to be about the schedule for masses. One of the reasons why we're setting up this whole pastoral zone is to ensure that as many people as possible have access to mass. But when we think about the number of churches that we have, especially some of the smaller churches in the outlying areas, some of the scheduling of masses may mean that those churches may not have mass on a regular basis. And so we need to look at the scheduling of masses, and that will be done by the pastoral zone itself and by the team that is involved. And so when we look at pastoral zones, or the implementation of the pastoral zones, there are quite a number of things that will be different. There will be a sense there that there won't be one priest or two priests for one or two parishes. There will be a sense of the priests will work with these lay people as a team to look after all the needs of the whole zone. There will also be helpful for priests. When you think about some of the age of our priests right now, we have 18 priests who are over 65. And so if you add some years to that, we'd have maybe 10 years, we'd have 18 priests over 75. If you think about as well, on the other end of the spectrum of the age in terms of priests, we have 5 priests who are under 50. And so that's a huge number of priests, a huge number of parishes that we need to need to look after in terms of priestly ministry, and yet we only have 5 who are under 50. And so they're, within the few years, we'll have to deal with some of the issues that are connected there. So this zone then will certainly give us a way of working together. It will give us a way of working together, priests with laity, and a real sense of co-responsibility. Having a sense there that co-responsibility will be the end result of this whole pastoral zone. When we think about the spiritual needs of parishioners, that's really the goal for all of this pastoral zone and pastoral reconfiguration that we're talking about. We're trying to ensure that we would have the infrastructure that would help parishioners in their spiritual needs, and so that's what we're looking at as we continue to work in this area. And so in closing, Pope John Paul II, in 2001, he talked about pastoral planning for the whole church. And as you see on the slide, he says, "Let us go forward in hope. A new millennium is opening before the church like a vast ocean which we shall venture relying on the help of God. The Son of God, who became incarnate 2,000 years ago out of love for humanity, is at work even today. We need discerning eyes to see this, and above all, a generous heart to become the instruments of His work." And so this whole project on pastoral zones is done with a real trust that we're trying to see how the Lord is leading us in this diocese, and we need to depend on His work and the call that He gives us at this particular time in our history. Thank you.